How do we imagine a future where gendered violence doesn't exist?
Shouldn't everyone be allowed to practice their faith in peace?
How is the way I dress any of your business?
By the time I'd reached adolescence, I was so insecure that I was vulnerable to abusers.
Muslim womanhood is linked with the ideas of submissiveness and subordination.
Influencers saying that they would rather be dead than look like you. Men trolling you over and over online. Beauty is seen as our one goal. I'm Gina Tonic. I'm a big fat legend from South Wales. About 3 years ago, I started the Fat Zine, which is a publication by fat people, for fat people and those that love them. Growing up and seeing all the incredible women around me, I thought, first of all, that all women grow up to be fat. All my aunties are fat, my grandma, my mum, so I think I was kind of right in that one. Fat-phobia is the belief that fat people are lesser than thin people. Fat-phobia is insipid, it's everywhere in our society. It's in the media, it's in when you get in an aeroplane and you can't fit in the seat. That's fat-phobia. No one's put the effort into making things accessible. There's also problems with body image, where we're told we are less beautiful, we're less worthy because we are fat, and that is fat-phobia as well. When I think of modern beauty standards, I just think, what a load of crap. The beauty standards are harder than ever because they've made it seem achievable. So with it being seen as achievable, it makes it so much harder when you can't achieve those goals. And it even becomes insipid within activism, especially with body positive activism, where we think the end goal is to feel beautiful. The systems of oppression are banking on that to distract us from bigger issues like domestic violence, issues like not getting the jobs we want, not getting the medicine we need. We need to rise up against beautiful being the best thing that a woman can be. My earliest memory of having someone talk about the way that I look or my body was actually the first week and then the whole of year 7. My mum gave me a short pixie cut just before I went in, and loads of people just mistook me for a boy. I found that really stressful, really upsetting, because you're being misgendered and you're being viewed in a way that you're not trying to be seen in the world. But since then, I've always made a point to be aware of other people's gender, how they're presenting themselves and what they want to be referred to. I think the terms for being a woman are broader than ever before, but that's a really cool thing, anyone gets to join in on the womanhood. Sexism and sexist abuse is different for plus-size women compared to our thin counterparts because there's that added layer of being from a marginalised identity. This happens across all kinds of different marginalised bodies, from race to queerness to disability to being trans, where you are being discriminated against not just for being a woman, but for being fat or being something else. So when we talk about solidarity between all women, they have to also work across all marginalised identity that comes under the label of womanhood. Otherwise, what's the point? I first got involved in fat liberation by being fat. Learning about feminism on Tumblr, like everyone in my generation learned about feminism, led me down rabbit holes about fat liberation, about movements from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and knowing that not much had changed, that lots of things had gotten worse, led to me getting involved in these kind of spaces and even creating my own called the Fat Zine. I really wanted to create a space that was specifically just for fat people, where fat people can share their creations, share their experiences just for them. So everyone who works on it is fat, and we feature the work of fat bodies. My general advice for allies and friends looking to support their fat friends and the fat community is to educate yourself. Don't put that onus onto your fat friends to tell you things about their experience and their struggles. You can easily go online and you can access resources like the Fat Zine that'll give you an insight into the fat experience and the things that we struggle with. It's just once you know what the struggles are of fat people, it's so much easier to be accommodating to them.
My name's Mariam, I'm a journalist and author, and I'm from the UK. When I was young, looking at my mother, I saw a strong, independent, really fierce woman. And having grown up, that is my experience of what it is like to be a woman as well. But I don't think all women in my community were like that. I don't think all women in society are like that. Growing up, I did think all Muslim women were the same way. So that's beautiful for me to know personally. I think often when we talk about the policing of bodies, specifically Muslim women, we think about what's happening over there in Middle Eastern countries. We think of stoning and we think of like autocratic governments. We don't necessarily look more closer to home what's happening in the West. We don't look at how things like the Burqa ban that were introduced in France in 2011 have had an impact on Muslim girls in terms of their education, in terms of workspace, and I would argue actually in its own very specific way, the West has quietly diminished a lot of Muslim women's rights. Gendered Islamophobia is Islamophobia mixed in with sexism and misogyny. It's as casual as, why do you wear a hijab? The assumption there is you're being forced to wear a hijab, but it could also be as drastic as someone pulling that hijab off of your head because they don't like the fact that you practice your faith and feel like it's a threat to them. I believe that the quieter version of gendered Islamophobia is more dangerous because it's this idea that you don't have intellect, you don't have autonomy, you don't have the right to your body, that they know better. That will always feel more threatening to me than an outright attack. My earliest memory of understanding how I was perceived was when I stood at a bus stop and a white man basically talked about me as if I wasn't there. He was talking about how stupid I looked. He was talking about how I probably couldn't speak English. And I did eventually turn around, even though I was a teenager, I did turn around and tell the man that I could understand everything that he said. It really showed me that his understanding of me and how I looked was that I was ignorant. I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know how to communicate for myself. And to him, that made it okay to basically stand there and talk about me in a demeaning way. The representation of Muslim women in our society is one that has consistently kept Muslim women in a very specific space, disenfranchised from politics, not able to take part in society. You know, there's no representation that will make someone feel empowered or heard. The breaking point for me was when David Cameron was reported to have said that Muslim women are traditionally submissive, and he compared that traditional submissiveness in line with the radicalization of Muslim men. And because of that specific thing, there was a whole backlash. However, that's the thing that triggered my book. It's not about the burqa. It was a way for Muslim women to talk back into this narrative that had been written about them, to write back into a space that they'd never been allowed to have a voice in. That's the thing that has pushed my activism. Writing, giving platform to other Muslim women to be their true selves, to be contradictory. If we're only seen as a monolith, we can't have rights. We can't have the choices that we want. And that's exactly what I was trying to tackle. Allyship is really interesting. Whilst bodily autonomy is a cornerstone of feminism, it doesn't seem to be when Muslim women are involved. The voices that are the loudest for movements like Me Too or the right to my body, they're the quietest when it comes to whether a Muslim woman should be allowed to dictate how she dresses her body. To be the best ally to Muslim women, you have to believe them at face value. You have to believe that they have the intellect to make the decisions. You have to believe that the way that they choose to dress their bodies is their choice. But you have to believe that they can still be an empowered person or woman with autonomy, even if their feminism or their practice of womanhood is different to yours.
My name's Evie Muir, my pronouns are she and her. I'm a domestic abuse specialist, a freelance writer and founder of Peaks of Colour, which is a Peak District-based Nature for Healing collective by and for people of colour. The definition of domestic abuse has evolved. It's no longer recognised as this outdated form of abuse perpetrated by a man against a woman that has to be physical, that has to cause a mark. We're now evolving in our understanding of it, that it's a pattern, a series of acts that completely crush your sense of self. There are laws and policies that are supposed to protect survivors, but we know they don't work. To say what a woman is an impossible. If we were to apply an intersectional lens to our understanding of gender and femininity and womanhood, there is no one way of experiencing this, because there's no one way of experiencing life. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I find it really difficult to answer any questions about what I thought of when I was little, who I was when I was little, and that's because of trauma. What I do remember, however, is the contentment of my mum and my grandma. That's something as white, working class women that I always aspire to be, and something that I still aspire to access. Contentment. My childhood is a bit of a blur due to the trauma. Despite all of that, what sticks in my mind is the racism that I experienced from white girls who were meant to be my peers, meant to be my friends, who had internalised and were regurgitating racism from the age of 4 up. And that came in the form of what we now have the language to describe as microaggressions. It was everything from commenting about my hair, how much prettier I'd look if I straightened it. I internalised that myself, and that turned to insecurity, it turned to self-loathing. And what's really interesting about that is that white women speak the loudest about violence against women and girls. They centre themselves in that victimhood, but I truly believe that one of the biggest contributing factors to my own victimhood was the racism I experienced by white girls from the age of 4 upwards. Here in the UK, if you are black and queer, your experience of accessing support, healing and justice is going to be vastly different than if you were a white, cisgender, heterosexual woman. It's likely that the support worker you have won't understand your lived experience. They may physically not have the systems in place to support you. For example, if you don't have recourse to public funds or you have insecure immigration status. It's going to be extremely scary to navigate the criminal justice system, and it's unlikely that you'll be able to access therapy from someone who looks like you and can support you in the way that is culturally competent. Abolitionist feminist praxis really underpins the work that I do elsewhere with Peaks of Colour, which is a Peak District-based Nature for Healing community club by and for people of colour. We have monthly hikes and regular workshops, which are creative and holistic workshops set in nature that are led collaboratively by facilitators of colour and explore alternative routes for healing and justice, but in nature. I always say that nature is just as important, equally as important to my own healing as talking therapy and traditional forms of support. I think if I didn't have the nature that's on my doorstep, I would be in a very different place to where I am now. Nature's offered me an escape, it's offered me peace, and Peaks of Colour is my informal, intimate invitation for people to experience that with me. For me, looking towards nature now as an option of exploration, of experimentation, of how we can find healing outside of these carceral feminist models is what brings me hope, what brings me joy. If your feminism isn't intersectional, if it isn't also advocating the removal of white supremacy, from trans misogyny, from ableism, it's not enough.
The fight for gender equality is ongoing, but the good news is that the world is becoming more and more aware of our need for radical change. Get involved.
Notice signs of violence and abuse and learn where to reach out for help.
Call out and reject chauvinistic, sexist and racist attitudes.
Support women seeking leadership roles. Listen.
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 Hands off.
My body.
My rights.
My future.
My choice.